All right, let me go ahead and get started. Okay, lots of little topics to discuss before we jump in, and the stimulus this week is a little bit of a challenge, so I'm going to jump into some notes and some uh, question responses. Reminder, next week is review week, so anything that in the last 4 weeks, including this week, that you kind of have not really done much on or want to review or anything like that, next week is the week to do it. Okay. Okay, I had somebody ask quite a few questions about the inspiration video for this week. So when you get a chance, just go ahead and pull up the inspiration video, and this might answer your questions as well. The first one is from 45 seconds to 48 seconds. He is at that point in the video talking about making his VRS call for the mute woman, and he says woman. He signs woman, look at, then he signs a little bit puzzled. Okay, so the person that asked me this question thought he was saying do puzzled, but she's actually saying woman, look at, a little bit puzzled. The woman was watching him make a VRS call, and she's like, what in the world is he doing? I didn't even know this guy was deaf, and he's making this call, so that's what that is. And that whole section are slight roll shifts throughout, but every single time he shifts, he clearly indicates, because clearly is relative, but he does, in fact, indicate who he is. So he says, this is what I did, this is what she did. This is what I did, this is what the woman did. Okay, this is what I did, this is what she did. And he either indexes to the woman in space, or he signs woman every single time. So if you go through that with your pause button, you can look for that. Also, guys, YouTube has a slow-mo cheat mode. So if you guys didn't know, you can actually slow it down, and you have, I think, 0.25 and 0.5. You can slow it down. Don't watch them first, slow down, though. Give yourselves a couple of chances to catch that finger spelling before you hit slow-mo, but that's certainly a way to help you catch whatever you're missing. Okay, this is a big one. This program does not focus on voicing. The reason being is that there are a bazillion different skills that we need to focus on in interpreting, and we have got to narrow it down. And so this program does not focus on it. To be honest with you, voicing is my favorite thing to mentor, but we're not doing that. However, I did have one very important question about voicing that I did want to address, and I mentioned it in the in the Say What video. So I brought it up when he signs something along the lines of, people will say deaf, disabled, deaf, handicapped, and deaf go, handicapped, I'm not handicapped, I'm not deaf. Okay, that roll shift. I did a terrible copy of it, but that's from memory. Okay, so, and in the Say What video, I mentioned that if we chose to borrow that third person, if we chose to borrow that direct dialogue, that direct quote, also called a first person dialogue, if we chose to borrow that, the voicing might sound like, when deaf people are called handicapped or disabled, the deaf community goes, oh, I'm not deaf, I'm not handicapped, I'm not disabled. And then I offered an alternative voicing, which I suggested is a better option. And I said something like, when deaf people are called handicapped or disabled, the deaf community tends to get up in arms about that distinction, or something along those lines. So I changed it from first person to third person. I pulled out good old So You Want to Be an Interpreter, and I want to read to you what it says about third versus first person about that. Okay. Fluent users of English rely heavily on the use of third-person address. So although, yes, in English, we do sometimes use first-person address, the majority of our narratives, our communication happens in third person. The majority of it does. ASL is the opposite. ASL, most interactions in ASL, if the person is actually signing ASL, it happens in first person. So here's an example. In English, we would say, he walked up to me and shook his finger in my face and told me where I could go. Okay? Where in ASL, you would see that entire dialogue happening in first person. But in English, it sounds more natural. The way we would more naturally say it is, he walked up to me and shook his finger in my face and told me where I could go. Competent users of ASL typically use first-person address to convey similar information. If an interpreter is working from English to ASL and maintains the English form of direct address rather than shifting into first-person address, the topic under discussion will often become unclear to the ASL participant. So meaning if we're interpreting and we hear English, something like, he walked up to me and shook his finger in my face and told me where I could go, if we didn't role shift that, it would be a very confusing way to convey that. We'd have to do it in first-person address for it to be clear. Likewise, when working from ASL into English, interpreters must remember to change the frequent first-person depiction into third-person address. Okay, so, this is a good sentence. Failing to make this accommodation for language/culture differences result in the deaf participant being misrepresented as childlike to the hearing participant. In other words, if we're voicing all the time in first-person address, it sounds like, he walked up to me and he was like, well, this is where you can go. And I was like, I'm not going to go there. You know what I mean? Like, it just starts to sound really young and teenagerish. Okay, so to answer the person's question directly, using first-person address is okay sometimes and is actually appropriate sometimes. It is a good exercise to really start listening to the way we speak and listening to when the majority of us choose to use first person in our speech. Now, everybody speaks differently. I have a friend who every story that she tells, she goes into first person, and it makes me giggle every time because I've had this discussion with some of my mentees, and I'm like, she uses it all the time. But most of us don't. That's an anomaly. Most of us, we use it, but we don't use it all the time. So the times when we tend to say, I think the average English speaker uses first person address is when somebody says something to you that's really, really odd, like the manager came up to me and said, get out of my store, something like that. You might tell your friend, like, can you believe I was at the mall? And the manager was like, get out of my store. That might be something you might actually borrow because that's a strange thing to have experience. But these mundane sort of, hi, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. You wouldn't sound like he came up to me and he said, hi, how are you? And I said, I'm fine. We just don't say that. We greeted each other and we moved on. Okay? So, all that to say that when you are practicing voicing, your go-to should be third person. When you see role shifting, and you see how often role shifting happens in a natural ASL dialogue, when you see role shifting, your go-to, your rote reaction should be, that needs to be changed, it needs to be changed, it needs to be changed. And you should have to make a concerted effort to go, actually, in this situation, in this specific situation, I bet that person really would, if that person were hearing, I bet they really would say it this way. They may say that first person address. They may use it in that way. But it should be those much more rare occurrences. It should be an effort. Right now, most of us, when we voice, your go-to, because we have a tendency to see it and say it, just like we hear it and sign it, without changing it, we see it and say it, and so your go-to is probably, I'm going to just borrow that address. I'm borrowing it. So practice it the opposite way. Practice making your go-to the third person, changing it to third person, seeing this, that, and practice voicing it as, we greeted each other and whatever was next. And that's all you would have to say there, okay? Practice it that way. And then eventually you'll be able to start picking and choosing when it is actually appropriate to go to first person. Any questions about that? Okay, we'll move right along. Skip that. At 111, he signs this. This sign, unless I'm mistaken, which I could be, is often signed like this. And when I say mistaken, I know for sure these are both signs. I'm just not 100% sure they're both the same sign. If anybody has any feedback about that, let me know. But I've seen both of these signs, but I see this more often, and I believe they're variations of the same sign. Does anybody have any?
I tend to think of this as like a potentially it could be like perversion. The thought process is perverted.
Okay.
I think we've used that a couple of times when it was this, something's going on with that person, something up here is not making sense, and it's taking them to this really, really off place.
Okay.
I'm not saying that it couldn't be the other, but it just...
It definitely means off. It definitely means off. Absolutely. I don't think of it as perversion. I definitely think of it as off, though. So so unless I hear otherwise, I'm going to assume they're variations of the same sign. And so, as Michelle was saying, it does mean off. Like and I sign it like this. I don't sign it like he does in the video. So off meaning, like in this case, he's like what a strange situation. Like, I'm a deaf guy, mute woman, asking me to do like what? That kind of thing. And somebody suggested maybe what a shocker, and that would work in that if you were voicing that. What a shocker! How surprising! Can you believe that? Those kinds of things fit with that. This sign also means off in the sense of thrown off, and also off. It's also used to mean, and I see it used this way a lot, to mean like if a college student has a test tomorrow and has to cram, they might say like, I'm going to plow through. Okay, that kind of thing. Plow through. I'm just going to put my mind to it and just finish it tonight. I saw Toby. You guys remember Toby? I think he was week 1 of this 5-week series. He does a whole series on renovating his house, and he signs. He's trying to like paint his kitchen or something like that, and he says maybe tonight I'll finish. That kind of meaning. So plow through, hit the grindstone, that kind of thing. So as you can see, it can mean significantly different things, but it does have to do with your brain just going, not the plan, not the plan. I could do this, but I'm just gonna finish it. Or I thought I was just gonna sit on the train but a strange situation occurred, that kind of thing. Questions?
I have a question. Okay. When I recorded myself voicing this video, and can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I recorded myself voicing this video, and I said it took me through a loop. Would that be appropriate?
Yeah, threw me for a loop. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. And Kurt?
Since we're discussing this, I pulled up my linguistics sheet that I had a deaf professor, so she has a bunch of glosses for this. And it's warped, lost their mind, twisted, pervert, insane, fanatic, and obsessed beyond normal.
Okay, thank you very much. So we had pervert come up again. Pervert. Who knew?
And can I just say, I was just going to email you saying, I think we've used it to mean they're pretty twisted, meaning like, whoa, like...
That makes sense, yeah. Twisted.
Not that it isn't used for the others, but I know I've seen it used like, you know what, don't hang out. That person, something's not too...
Yeah, like his mind is bent. I think that's what's glossed as, mind bent or mind fracture. And again, they might be a little bit different. I need to investigate that a little bit further. If I find out more about that, I will let you guys know. But thank you, both of you, for that. Okay. Oh, I have to rush. Okay. Brain versus think was another question. So brain is a noun, think is a verb. A brain, to think. Noun, verb. So double movement, brain, brain, think. Brain, think. Okay, and then a few quick notes before we go into this interpretation. Make sure you are including your pronouns. So if it's they are eager, then it's they are eager. Don't just say that the teacher talked eager. The whole chunk is missing. So everybody just think about your pronouns and do not forget to include your pronouns. And I want to just bring these up before we get started so that you guys can be, if you happen to do these things, you can be thinking about it as we go along. The sign professor, I see a lot of people sign professional, but a professor is a teacher. So a couple of choices to make when dealing with the word professor. If the term professor is being used because it is a distinguishing honor to be a professor, then you want to make it clear that it's professor. Okay, so professor or Professor Thomas. Okay, if in this case they're the teachers just saying the names, we can discuss how we're going to handle it in this case. But if a student says, yeah, my professor gave us homework tonight, then it could just be teacher. That student's not trying to say professor because of this honor. But if you were on stage giving a presentation and we're like, and I'd like to introduce Professor so-and-so to discuss the next topic, it would be professor. Professor. The sign follow connects. Connects. So this is follow, to physically follow somebody. I'll follow you to the party. I'll follow you, but to follow, to adhere to a law or a rule connects the whole time. Follow. A website is often fingerspelled, but it's sometimes signed www like this. Something like a balance sheet. Paper doesn't quite convey the idea of balance sheets. We have to think about how can we convey that idea of balance sheet more clearly than just paper. Access is signed like this. Oh, here's a bigger one. Rhetorical questions, and I see this a lot. Rhetorical questions should pause, eyebrows up. So if you're signing, I'm going to go, I'll use where. So I'm going to go to Chicago, okay? So what I often see is, and it should be, I don't know why I'm smiling about that, but clearly I want to go to Chicago. So, okay, pause slightly, eyebrows up. Okay. College economics classes. So lots to think about with college economics. So we have the student in front of us, clearly college ready, college in college. So that's a decision right there. That's something we should be thinking about. I think I typed in your video that he or she is completely bilingual, so that helps you make decisions, and but prefers ASL, completely bilingual ASL user, college economics. Okay, here we go. We are going to shift gears from discussing the private sector last unit to the public sector. Okay, so what can we start with? So I'm seeing two things. Starting with last, meaning like last unit, I assume what was going to be going with. I also saw up until now, and either of those could work. So we could do last unit, okay, or you could do up till now and talk about what's been happening. Up until now, focus on private. You could do that. Up until now, focus on the private sector. So either one of those times could work. Past unit or up until now, either of them is fine. Either of them are fine, okay? So, and I did focus on, as you guys can see, You guys may even chose to do maybe study or learn, okay, or me teach. All those work. I'll do last unit, me teach, private sector. Okay. Now, and I'm going to set them up as a group like this, private sector. Now, why do you think I'm choosing to fingerspell private sector? Patricia?
Because this is more like a secret, like that kind of secret, not like private in that concept that we're discussing right now.
Exactly right. Now, other options could be expanding on the idea of private sector. Why do you think I chose not to do that? Somebody else. Michelle? Sorry, tiny little
Student, I says it. The student is bilingual, is already a college student. They've already been talking about what private sector is, so they should know.
Yep, exactly. We just talked about it. The whole last unit was about private sector. If they don't know those words by now, they are trained gone, right? So private sector, throw it at them. They better know it by now, okay? Move right along. So we're shifting gears. Shifting gears would work too, okay? Shifting gears to the public sector, okay? And we can fingerspell that again, public sector, okay? And then now this is new to them, so we may want to expand on that just a little bit for them, okay? A couple of the suggestions that I saw in the videos were government look at, oversee them. I saw government control, government pay for. All of those are fine interpretations of what the public sector does. Okay, and I think they're really nice two-word, quick, boop expansions, not too crazy, but enough to give the deaf consumer a, oh, I got it. I know what we're talking about now. Okay? Moving right along. I know that ever since you guys heard Professor Thomas's skeptical view about the industry, you've been chomping at the bit to dive into this. Okay, so we have, first of all, when did this happen? So what's the time? Yep, in the past. Yep, at some point this happened. There are no details here. If this were a real, well, there are some details, but there are a lot of details missing. If this were a real situation, we may know all the details about, maybe Professor Thomas came in, maybe we know that she's a female and she came in and she had this long, big presentation about this public sector. Maybe we would know that Professor Thomas is a male teacher who popped in one day and said, you guys are talking about private sector. Well, let me tell you about the public sector. Boy, oh boy, let me. Oh, gotta run. Maybe that's what it was. And students are like, what? I want to learn more about that. What's up with that public sector? We don't know the details. So all of those things you can just leave out of it. Let's not get bogged down with all those kinds of things. So before, who are we talking about? Yep, before the teacher, and I notice I'm indexing, I'm putting them somewhere. The teacher, I'm going to just say Professor Thomas, okay? He or she, luckily in ASL we don't care. I'm going to kind of intro the role. I'm about to do a role shift, but I'm going to intro it just to say what they did. He or she talked about his perspective, okay? So before, the teacher, Professor Thomas, talked about his perspective. And then I'm going to role shift it really briefly to remind them of kind of what this teacher said, okay? Now, the teacher had a skeptical view about the industry. What industry? Yep, public sector. His view was skeptical. After I wrote that, I thought, I'm going to delete that. We don't want to handle skeptical, but I left it in there because we can manage it. So if you are skeptical about something, I saw no trust or don't trust or maybe trust. I'm not so sure about them. Maybe it's more that. Sign that again, Michelle. I just missed it. Ah, okay. So interesting. So your view is this: you're skeptical about how successful it is, how well run they could be. Interesting. I definitely thought more about trust, but that does make sense. I'm skeptical about the success of public entities. Interesting. Any other perspectives? Doubt what? I actually think if you tack doubt onto both of either of those interpretations, I think that would be a really good choice. So like doubt, successful doubt, or trust, doubt. I think both of those could very just nicely, succinctly convey that skepticism. Any other suggestions? Okay, so let's pick one of them. So we'll do. I'll actually just put it all together. So we have before the teacher, Professor Thomas, talked about his perspective. He or she. Okay, then I'm going to shift slightly. And then back. Okay, trust, successful, doubt, done. So I kind of picked each one of yours and put it all together, and it's different than I did. Totally different, but it still works. Okay, so that's the role shift. He talked about his skepticism, and you've been chomping at the bit to dive into this. Ever since you've been chomping at the bit. What I want to do at the end of that role shift is, since clearly the students that are here saw this occur, I want to add their reaction. So at the end of this, he or she you all, okay, looking back at the audience, you all maybe looked at like this, and this is a classifier to show a group of, like just a group of people, a room full of people, like, huh? Like just watching and sitting, watching. That's really all it is. So, and that would look like, maybe that, or something like that.
This might be being picky, but does it matter if the people watching are standing or sitting? Like, does that make a difference on whether you would use this classifier or not, or does that not matter?
Thinking.
Because it looks like people crouch down, kind of, or like.
I think it can actually be used for people standing also. It's because it's not this classifier. This is different. It's not really representing the seats as much as it is the people's bodies. You know, like people can walk around the room like this, bending. So I think it's more of, I think it can be standing also. I think it can. Okay, where were we? That was it. So you've been chomping at the bit, as you saw. I did for chomping at the bit. Oh, I didn't do ever since. So you guys, ever since, learn more, eager, something like that. Or curious, ever since, you guys curious. That could work too. Lots of different ways you could show that idea of chomping at the bit. All right, next one. Some museums, schools, and hospitals fall under the public sector and have to strictly abide by the rules the government hands down. Okay, what are we talking about? Museums, schools, hospitals, out there, some of them, okay? that idea of falling under the public sector, I do see signed a lot under. It's very common, and I'm not criticizing it. I sign it like that sometimes myself. Okay, so something, you know, the government is over them. The government is over them. So museums, schools, and hospitals, they are under. So public, under, right there. I chose to do they are included in this bunch. They're in this. Okay, but either one of them are fine interpretations. So, and it might be, depending on how long it's been since I've indicated once again that this is public, it might be a good time to spell that again. Public, they are included in there. May not be necessary, but. And have to strictly abide by the rules the government hands down. And everybody, well, very similar interpretations of this sentence. So we're talking about, once again, in this phrase, separate phrase, so we ask ourselves, what are we talking about? We're talking about the government. You could say their rules, or they have rules, okay, or rules. And they're strict. You could just say strict, fine. And they must follow. Follow. Again, follows like this. Well, I'll keep going. So he will also sign rules, fine too. Rules, rules, rules. Okay, just want to make sure it's plural. However you choose to sign it plural. Okay, I used to take care of the books for a museum while I was in college, and I was shocked at the stringent regulations my boss told me we had to follow. All right, now we're talking about when. In the past, and this is an interesting sentence because you can almost envision. If this were a movie and you were watching a movie and they flipped to this scene, I used to take care of the books for a museum while I was in college. They flipped to that scene. So the first thing you would notice as the scene popped up is, oh, we've changed time. So now we're 10 years ago and she's wearing, you know, 90s clothes or 80s clothes. Like the time would be different. That's the first thing you notice. The next thing you notice is that it's a college scene, right? So that's the second thing you notice. And the third thing, they zoom in on her, what, working at a desk, doing accounting work. So that, if you think of it almost like that when you're creating these, when you're setting up your sentences, that might help organize things a little bit clearer and more ASL. So we have, the first thing we notice is in the past, college, okay? Oh, I forgot about museum. So a museum, I worked, I'm going to put my museum over here. So a museum, I worked there as an accountant. Yeah, that's just the simple way to do that. I did see an expansion of take care of the books that I thought was very clear, unnecessary, but very clear. It totally worked. But I'm just going to do accountant. Past college, museum, I worked, accountant. Okay? Next phrase. And I was shocked at the stringent regulations my boss told me we had to follow. Now, who or what are we talking about in this phrase? It's somewhat debatable, so don't be afraid. Rules. I'm saying rules and boss. Let's see if we can do it with both. When I was accountant. Rules. It does work with both. So I'll do rules since I just figured that out in my head. So we have rules as the topic, okay? My boss, he or she, and then you're going to roll shift and say what they said. So must follow, government give, or government must follow, something like that. rules, my boss. Okay, that works. You could also do the boss first. So my boss, and then just include rules into that. So my boss. Hold on a second. I was shot in the string. Yeah. So there's nothing government. They don't say government in that sentence. So my boss. My tendency for this, for some reason, is also to sign this, and this is often signed kind of like, I don't want to say a joke, but it's almost like when you have to, like, when you don't want to abide by something, or when somebody's blindly following something, this sign is sometimes used, like a blind following. So for some reason, I have my gut wants to sign that for that. I would still sign follow. It's kind of like a, that we have to do it kind of a thing. It's the government, so what are you going to do? That kind of feeling. And then I want to do the response to that. So my boss, me, and then she says, I was shocked at the stringent regulation. So maybe me, maybe that. Or you could sign me shock. You could sign me shock, but I think that me is more what a deaf person would sign. Next one. Since this museum was funded by government grants and public donations, they didn't want anyone questioning how they spent their money. So for transparency, they had their financials posted on their website. Lots of chunks in here. I had to do, probably about 6 months ago, I interpreted for a big public entity, big company in the public sector, a big, long company-wide, big this way, not long this way, big meeting about transparency. So I thought about that when writing this, so that's why you guys got stuck with transparency. Okay, so since this museum was funded by government grants and public donations, let's start there. What are we talking about? Yep, we're talking about the museum. The museum, everybody's signing it first. Museum, okay? And then, and we already may have it set up in space, but I'm going to just sign it just to be clear and put it where I had it before. And what are we saying about the museum in this first phrase? What are we saying about the museum? We are saying how run. That's fine to put in there. I don't think it's necessary, though. I think you can do museum and then do government pay, people, companies, donate, and I think that's enough. I think that's clear that we're talking about that's how it's run, but the way you signed it worked out was fine too. So the museum, government, pay for, this sign pay for, everybody please sign it. This is one of those signs that I do not see mentees signing enough, and deaf people sign it all the time. It means the concept of spend money. It means the concept of pay for, in the sense, not pay for, but let's go out to lunch and I'll pay for you. I will treat. It's the same as fund, in the sense that government funds this organization. The government funds the museum. Okay, it pays for it to run. It pays for it. And then public donations, I signed people, companies, or you could do people. This is probably better. People, companies, just do that. People, companies, donate. Yes, Phyllis? Business, businesses, yeah, that's fine. Businesses, companies, same. Yeah, I think that's same. Yep. Okay, so we did that first chunk. Next one is they didn't want anyone questioning how they spent their money. Anyone's questioning how they spent their money. That's enough of a chunk. We can stop there. Okay, so I did people, companies, and I put them there. So they didn't want anyone questioning how they spent their money. I see that as these people who are donating money are the people who are probably going to be questioning, like, what'd you do with all these donations? So I'm going to reference them when I show the concept of questioning how they spent their money. Okay, so they, and then all I'm going to do is look at the museum and go, okay, so they are questioning. They are going, so this money, how are you spending it? And then they don't want that, so they don't want that. Okay, they don't want that to happen. They don't want this spend how, don't want. Okay, so let me go from the beginning just to show you where we're at right now. Museum, government, pay for, people, companies, donate. Them. Okay, so now we're going to roll right into the next part. They don't want that to happen. So they prefer, and then we have, for transparency, they had their financials posted on their website. So we have preferred. Now, the concept of transparency is often signed like this, to mean like, you guys can, you're free, we're not hiding anything. We're not hiding anything. So just go ahead and look, okay? It also, but it doesn't have to be signed that way, I guess my point. So here are a couple of options we have. We may set up this phrase by saying, prefer open, okay? Prefer open. Look at. There it is. And I actually, for a company, for business transparency, I don't think this sign is actually necessary. I sometimes like this feeling of, you know, or accounting. There you go. Take a look. There you go. Take a look. All the people out there, anybody can just look at it. Or in this case, it's online. So it could be accounting, online. Look. Go ahead. Look, that feeling of transparency. You guys can just take a peek. No, not covering anything up. So my point in all that is this sign, although it is commonly used for transparency, could be used, could not be used. But I do think that if you choose to use that, still the idea of look at what we're doing or look at what you're doing, I think is an important visual to add in the interpretation. So I'll go ahead and include it in. I'll do all of it. So for transparency, they had their financials posted on their website. So we have prefer open, accounting, posted online, look. I did it a little bit differently than my gloss, but something like that. I saw a lot of different signs for posting online. None of them are incorrect. So I tend to sign upload like this, upload. Sometimes I'll just sign upload kind of like sideways, just shoot it onto the web. Yeah, this one's fine too, although I don't see it as often. I see this for streaming a lot, streaming video. Like right now I'm streaming it onto the web. If you're watching like Hulu, then you're streaming it from the web to your TV, streaming it down. And post online, I see post online also, post. So all of those are fine signs for posting on things online. Okay,
Wait. I have
Yes.
a question. So when I was practicing, I kind of had the idea of putting, I don't know if it works conceptually or not. Sorry, I have so many questions tonight. But when they were questioning about where the museum or how the museum was spending its money, I was thinking about becoming like the museum people per se, and like having the money and being like, you know what I mean? Like, and they're spending it, and it's like, well, where's it going? Or like, you know what I mean? I don't know if that makes.
No.
I don't know.
So you were
No.
saying that the people, you thought that the people, excuse me, questioning how the money was spent were people at the museum?
No, like showing that the people at the museum have these people's money, and they're spending the money however way they're spending it, whatever.
Uh-huh.
So they have this money, and it's whatever, and then these people are like, what are you doing with our like how are you spending it? You know what I mean?
Uh-huh. I'm just trying to figure out that. I mean, that's fine. That fits. But where does that fit into the interpretation? So show me what you did for that whole sentence.
Maybe we don't have time for that.
Whatsoever.
maybe a different time. I don't know. I don't know what I had in my head. I had like the museum money, like they have this, and like it's like going down, and the people are just like, where's the money? What happened to the money? Like they're questioning, they're curious, like what happened to the money? Like what's up with that?
That works beautifully. And then you have to move into the transparency section. Yeah.
That works?
Yeah, it works. It's just long. And so yeah, but it's fine. I mean, it's really nice. Actually, you had two different perspectives in there. So you did the museum, government, pay for, people, companies, donate. Now we're switching gears, so we're adding their perspective. They get the money, spend, and yeah, it worked beautifully. Absolutely. Anybody have any questions or anything about that? Yep. Anytime we can show two perspectives too when we're role shifting is a bonus. Sometimes, like I said, it's hard to get it all in because we all have so much time constraints. But whenever you can, it's always a nice thing to show. Very commonly do deaf people show two perspectives. Oh, man, there's a whole other thing I wanted to discuss. I totally forgot about it. Let's just keep going and hopefully I can get it in at the end. Okay. Okay. Okay, so next one. So the balance sheet that I prepared was posted for public access. What are we talking about? Yep, so balance sheet, the concept of balance sheet, we have to just figure out what to do with it, but that's the topic here. So we might want to do we might want to do balance sheet or balance sheet. When we're making a decision on how to interpret something, we always have to consider up to many things, but most importantly two. The speaker's intent and the consumer's language needs. What are they going to understand the clearest? Okay. The fact that this is a balance sheet, this is not an accounting class. We're not learning about balance sheets here. So fingerspelling the term balance sheet and expanding on what it means, all not necessary. Just the idea that it's a financial document that I worked on that now is there for the whole world to look at. Oh my goodness, how scary was that, right? That's what the speaker's trying to say. We're not teaching a lesson about balance sheets right now. So that's an important factor to help you decide where to go with balance sheet. So we may choose to sign my balance sheet or balance sheet, something that lets us know we're talking about financials. Okay, my work, my financials. You may even choose to the balance sheet that I prepared, meaning like this is my hard work that, my work and it was online. So you may choose to show that concept of hard work by expanding on that. Because I think that's really what she's trying to convey. So the balance sheet, me, however you want to show just that diligent work, that's my work, that everything that I did, and you could do that maybe even with many different signs can convey that idea. I put, it's probably online, me, something along those lines to show that, okay? That's the concept of I prepared, was posted for public access, okay? So I prepared it, finish, post online, right there, okay? So meaning when it was all done, boom, on the web, okay, for public access. So that could be signed a lot of different ways. You could sign literally just anyone, pull up, look at. You could sign that. Anyone, pull up, look at, can. My nightmare, okay? Or it could be the whole public and anybody out there, just pull up, look at. Something like that. Questions? Okay. Next sentence is talk about intimidating. My work was just out there for scrutiny. Okay. So we just signed, I'll just do the simple one. Anyone, pull up, look at, can. Okay. Talk about intimidating. Me. Yes. So intimidating. Scary. This is the sign that means boom, 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 boom. Heart beat, 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 beat. Not guilty. Not guilty. Beat, 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 beat. It means petrified, nervous, scared. Okay? So that's one way to convey intimidating. This is another way to convey intimidating, just scared. Intimidating like this. Okay. Any of those could work. So that's what I did, me. Okay, intimidating. My work was just out there for scrutiny. So that's almost the same sentence as before. Out there, pull up, analyze, can, criticize me, could. Okay, all those could work. Okay, next one. My boss always talked about the importance of oversight and accountability, which stressed me out. So we have who or what are we talking about in this one? My boss, yep. I hear a lot of people say, I was told in college that we just take the last thing, we move it forward, and that's ASL structure. As you see, it depends on how the sentence is structured. The English, we can put things all different ways, and so we just have to really think about what's being discussed. Sometimes it is all the way at the end of 20 words, and sometimes it's the very first thing. So my boss, and we already had her set up, so we might just reference her, but it's been a little while, so we'll say her again. She always talked about, so this is something that she did often. Okay, so she frequently or she often, and then we're going to roll shift. And the importance of oversight and accountability. Okay, so I saw a lot of things like oversight, accountability, important. That's fine. That's fine. I have something a little bit more elaborate, and I'm not even sure I think it is necessary, but I'll show it to you anyway. My boss often so I did a little bit differently. Rather than it just being generally watching you, responsible, important, I did kind of like the reason why we're looking at your balance sheet is your work is your responsibility. It's your burden. Okay? So watching you, keeping an eye on you is important. What else did I say? Something like that. But the simple version might be just as effective, which was, again, keeping an eye on you, being responsible, important. Yeah, that's probably good enough. And the end of that is which stressed me out, which stressed me out. Okay, so she frequently said this thing, and that stressed me out. Okay, what does a person look like when they're stressed out? Me, what? Me. Yeah, all those things. Stress, maybe. I like this for stressed out. When I'm stressed out, this is what I do. Me, or me. Me stress. I really don't. I'm not crazy about stress in this setting. Me stress. Yeah, it's okay, but it's clear, but it's not. I don't think it's grammatically correct. But me. All of those could work. This sign is another sign that can mean nervous, my legs shaken. I guess what it is stress is not an adjective. It's a noun. And so all the other ones are adjectives. Yeah, right. So me feels stress. Yes. Yep, right. Last sentence, but, and take note of this, that is one of the cornerstones of the public sector government oversight. Okay, so transition, we have understand, maybe, understand. Yep, it wouldn't be but or but because we're not saying anything. We're not saying anything in contrast here. So in ASL, but is a contrasting word. This is more of used in transition. So understand, and then we have and take note of this. Okay, that works. I didn't think about that one. That works well. Yeah, that works really well. I feel. I would do this before I did this. Like, heads up, guys, remember this kind of a thing. Or you could do what I have here. I think I like yours better, but that works as well. I saw somebody in their recording did this, and I thought that was a good choice. Make note of this kind of a thing. That is one of the cornerstones of the public sector government oversight. This is the sentence that I really wish I hadn't put in there. I don't like it at all. So one person I suspect actually looked up the term cornerstone. I did as well. And so I saw one interpretation, this word foundation, which comes up with cornerstone. It works in this interpretation. Let's play with it. I'll play with what I have here. So because we're talking about the public sector, I'm going to make that the topic. So after we did our intro, heads up everybody, this is important. The public sector, I'm going to reiterate this. We're talking about this. It's very important. This the whole unit's going to be on this. Foundation, maybe that could work there. Foundation, even this idea of important, what, and then government oversight. Okay. So there are several different ways we could convey that idea of one of the cornerstones. You guys probably have noticed that I minimize my use of rhetorical questions, but in this case, it is emphasizing, again, for emphasis, and so I think a rhetorical question does work here. The idea of cornerstone, maybe it's foundation, maybe it's just one important what, or one like really essential top. One that is one of the cornerstones. One top important what? Maybe that could work. Foundation. Honestly, I came up with nothing that I was like solid on. Does anybody have any other ideas for that? One of the cornerstones. No, I thought I saw some. Patricia, were you going to say something? You changed your mind? Oh, no? Okay. Yeah. I mean, they all work fine, but I'm not like, ooh, I like that one. Not yet. Yeah. So what I had originally was just important. So, what did I have originally? I had, oh, so that was my first thought, that idea that there's a lot of things there are a lot of components to it, but one important part of it is what? Government oversight.
I had a question. Is this? Oh, I'm sorry. Are you looking for? Is it for the word, like for the concept of cornerstone?
Yes.
Okay, because I was thinking.
Oh, you froze up.
Oh. Like, period.
So your interpretation.
It's because of the money.
Government.
It's because of the money.
Since government funds the public sector, they are going to oversee what's going on.
Required to prove money. Ow. Or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. It feels like it's a really long expansion.
Yeah. I still think that the idea that I mean, grammatically the sentence is beautiful. I just don't know if it matches exactly what that sentence is saying. Because cornerstone, we'll think about that some more. Maybe on Thursday I'll have a better interpretation. Somebody will send me a video and I'll go, oh, that's perfect, and I'll share it with everybody.
I have a thing. Maybe with that, maybe like, okay, I don't know if I just made this up or if this is true work ASL thing, but maybe like comment about like how important the money is, and then be like something about that key, no? Like key. I don't know. I don't know if that's just me.
I actually like that. And fingerspelled key is very common in ASL. So maybe one of the cornerstones. And maybe you don't even need the money thing. You could just do public sector, one key, foundation, one key, government oversight. I don't know. Something. We'll figure this one out. We'll figure it out. We're very, very, very close. Luckily, our deaf student is not going home not understanding what's going on. It's just maybe not the best thing that we could provide. All right. I want to say one last thing before you guys go. Interpreting. The interpreting process, in the simplest terms, there's 5 steps, and I just wanted you guys to be thinking about the interpreting process and where you might fall in the areas that you're lacking. We first receive the information. So we either receive the information or we receive the information. And this seems like it's going to be really long, but I promise I'll be done in 5 minutes. We receive the information or we receive the information. Okay? Then the second step, and if any of these things go wrong, this means the interpretation goes wrong, right? So if we're receiving the information on a VRS call this way, but the screen freezes, we didn't receive it, right? Means the interpretation messes up. Or that happens, the receiving messes up, that means interpretation is going to mess up. If we're doing this, we're signing in ASL listening, and somebody sneezes in the room, well, we missed that chunk, it's gone, that means the interpretation is going to mess up. So all these things impact the interpretation. Second is understanding. We're doing this, but then all of a sudden the person starts talking about something we've never heard of before, and we cannot process because we do not understand what the person's talking about. just don't understand. This happens, and signs we don't know, as you can imagine, for the second step, understanding, this fails more than this fails for those of us that are first language English speakers. Okay, so we receive the information, we understand the information. Second step is dropping form. By second, I mean third. Third step is dropping form. Okay, so when we hear the information, we understand the information, then all of that English that we just heard has to go. We have to go into some sort of picture. We have to get rid of that English. Okay, same thing here. We have to get rid of that ASL, or we're going to be voicing those first-person dialogues and things like that. Fourth, we compose it into the target language. Okay, so we have to know ASL, know what it should look like in order to put it into that other language. Composing it into English is usually much more successful when we're voicing, because we know English is, for most of us, it's our first language. Composing it into ASL is usually much more of a challenge. And lastly is monitoring. We won't have to get into that so much, but we do have to monitor to make sure our interpretation is working, and we're good, okay, we keep going, okay? So for English to ASL, which is what we're primarily doing here, the areas that are typically the problem, where the interpretation typically fails, is dropping form and composing it into ASL. And usually if you are, so in the improvement process, when we finally get you to drop form, yes, it's not English word, we end up with a garbled ASL interpretation. And so once you've mastered this idea of, okay, I'm finally not hearing a word, signing a word, hearing a word, signing a word, know that the next step is, I have got to get a lot more exposure to ASL so that I can, now that I have this message and I understand the message and I'm not just following English, I can actually see where to go with ASL. And so if you're in this step, to improve this step is exposure, exposure, exposure. And not just exposure trying to voice and messing up your voicing and getting frustrated with your voicing and trying to voice something else and messing up and getting frustrated, but watching and relishing and going, well, look how cool that interpretation was, or wow, look at how they just role shifted. Like, we think about this role shift, and okay, you did this and you did this, and wow, and the concept in English would have been that. And so that's what I mean by exposure, really, really looking at the language. People think, well, I watch 10 videos a day and I try to voice them, and I voice them really badly, so I don't know, I just feel like bleh about it. But that's not what I mean. I mean watching and enjoying and being interested in how they're using the language so that you can start incorporating those things into your own ASL. Any questions? All right, we are done. That's it. Have a fantastic week. I will see you guys on Thursday. Take care.